Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my head. Crystalline Knowledge Speakers Forum. How's it going, Scott? Welcome to the Crystalline Knowledge Speakers Forum for an event. Very well filled out room. Rather amazing. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, for those of you who are new, there's probably a few of you, what this is all about. It's a little bit of a homegrown, almost a TED Talks kind of thing that grew out of a discussion forum that some of us have been running here in the city called Coffee Chat. We had invited a speaker out one time and it was quite successful, so we continued on with that and developed a speakers forum where we host a guest speaker about once a month. A few things on this. There is a cost, as you noticed, coming in of $5, which is not a coffee chat thing. It's particular to these events. It was suggested at the beginning. One of the reasons was there's a cost for the room, and also we zero out at the end of the night with another purpose to it. I'll explain that towards the end of the event. If anybody's got a cell phone, probably if you could put it on vibrate, that would be great. The washrooms are back at the corner on that side, down that hallway. And at this point, I will turn the event over to the man who will introduce our guest speaker for this evening. Rick.
Thank you. I'll start off by saying that we've known each other for about 17 years, on a professional level, I should say. I injured myself in a mine accident years and years ago, and he helped me get through it. About, 8 years ago or whatever, we kind of started to talk a little bit more through our sessions and stuff, and you know how that is when you're not sure what a person's going to feel like when you tell them something personal, like, do you think I'm crazy, sort of thing like this. So I said, I watched The Secret, and I liked it. And then I knew we'd get along because his eye went, oh, yeah, I got another movie for you, he says, And ever since then, we talked quite a bit during our sessions and stuff like that. So, one of the things, I'll skip that. Anyways, I'll just get right to it here. I want to introduce Dr. Andy Pawlovich.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you all coming out this evening, putting off your yard work and your outdoor work to join us this evening. So it's truly an honor. When I was talking with Rick, and he was telling me a little bit about your group, I wasn't getting a big, clear enough idea as to what exactly is the group looking for, what types of things, types of speakers have you had in the past, and he mentioned all different kinds of people from all different walks of life, and basically the intent behind it was to improve your quality of life. And again, my eyes light up because that's kind of my thing, is I kind of am gravitating, and the purpose is to help people improve their quality of lives. So why are you here? Well, I don't know if all of you know Rick, but I do, and you trust Rick. And you want to learn about improving your quality of life and hopefully to better yourself. And to answer questions and perhaps ask more questions. I usually find that the more I learn, I realize there's the less I know. Right? Why am I here? I trust Rick. And, Rick wouldn't bring me into a room of people that weren't going to be open to perhaps some new concepts, or maybe these aren't new concepts. I'm just a regular guy. I want to know how things work. I ask a lot of why or why not questions. Why are things this way instead of they just are? And if someone says, well, is this possible? I say, why not? As opposed to, no, it can't be. Again, quality of life issues, helping people improve their quality of life, that's one of my purposes. And there's some things I don't like. I don't like conformity, okay? To do things just because that's the way they've been done. And I don't like cookie cutter type of stuff. So yes, I'm a chiropractor, but I don't consider myself a cookie cutter chiropractor, whatever that is, okay? Because we're all different. We're all. There's no such thing as a normal chiropractor. Fairly certain of that. So let's get right into this. This isn't going to be an advertisement or a poster session for chiropractic, but there's definitely going to be a component of that, whether you're familiar with it or not. So there's some basic concepts here. The central nervous system is CNS controls and coordinates all functions of the human body, and that's a fact. And that's stated in the Bible of all healthcare professionals, Grey's Anatomy, not the TV show. Okay? Brain and spinal cord make up the central nervous system, and the nerves that branch off the spinal cord and exit the spine comprises the network of the peripheral nervous system. It goes to the periphery of your body. And the nervous system receives information and communicates function throughout the body. So the message here is the nervous system is the master system of your body. And it knows what to do. And so if the nervous system controls everything and knows what to do, then how can anything go wrong? Okay? Hi, come on. And that's what people ask me all the time. If our body is self-healing, self-organizing, how could it allow anything to go wrong? Well, what it can't control is stress. Okay? The environment provides stressors constantly. That's different than stress. So there's mental stressors. I haven't met anyone that doesn't have that. Physical stressors, bending, lifting, car accidents. Chemical, radiation, electromagnetic stresses around us, more and more every day. How we react and adapt to the environment, these stressors, depends on the functionality of the nervous system. Inappropriate reactions to stressors in the environment is stressful. Okay? Inability to recover from those stressors is a stress to us. And even anticipating, the anticipation of stressors for a much longer time than the actual duration of the event itself is stressful. You know, when you get kind of worked up about something ahead of time, like maybe presenting to a room full of people or something like that, you know, that can be stressful to you, and then once you go through it, it's not that bad. Stressors are outside constantly. They're always at us. Stress is on the inside. So, here's a question. Compared to 100 years ago, are we as a society under greater stress than people 100 years ago? Okay. And we could be here all night debating that, right? Ask your grandparents. And we are, make no mistake, we are exhibiting our signs of greater stress more than ever before. But really? Like, it was all about survival or not. Where are you going to get your next meal from? Life was fairly simple that way. Feed yourself, feed your family, carry on. Technology has made life easier, and survival is not the issue anymore. And we know more about the human body. We know more about a lot of things than ever before. And people are living longer. But are we addressing what we are genetically programmed to do? And up to about 100 years ago, it was fairly simple. Survive, you know, a lot of physical work, and life has changed over the past 100 years considerably. Well, why is our health system so bombarded if we're living so much longer? Well, our health is all about choices and lifestyle choices, and negative lifestyle choices makes us more susceptible to stress. And stress alters the nervous system function in a negative way, obviously. It changes its course. So, for example, We're walking along this path in the BC Rockies. Life couldn't be better. Okay? This is beauty in its finest in nature. And we are relaxed. All these positive brain waves are going, all these wonderful things are happening in our body, and boom. Do we still feel the same way? Okay? When that bear shows up, the healthy response is not to meditate that bear away. Okay? It's get that blood pressure up, tighten those muscles, slow down digestion, and get the heck out of there. Okay? And so this brings us to one of the, I would say one of the greatest books that I've seen written about health in general, written by Dr. Robert Sapolsky, a neurobiologist from Stanford University. Why zebras don't get ulcers. And, well, why don't zebras get ulcers? Zebras are the, out in the Serengeti are the lowest on the food chain, okay? And there's plenty of them, and everybody's trying to get at them. So you would think that between us and them, they would have more reason to have an ulcer than us, because someone's always trying to eat them, okay? But they don't get ulcers. When they're grazing, they're in a rest and digest type of state. They're calm, they're relaxed, but then maybe they hear a noise or the signal's been sent out in the herd that danger is imminent. And they'll startle, and they'll all as a group take off and try to get to safety if a lion is lurking, some type of predator. Once the signal is out that they are told that danger is no longer around, boom, they stop, start grazing, lower their blood pressure, get rid of all those stress hormones, and they're getting back to rest and digest. They can switch it on and off like that. Wouldn't that be nice, right? Well, why can't we do that? What's one of the major differences between, there's lots of differences, but what's one of the major differences between us and a zebra?
They live in the present moment.
They live in the present moment. Exactly. And perhaps that's because their brains are the size of a walnut. Okay? And they're not capable of nearly the brain function that we are. We are capable of living in the present moment, but it's a lot more difficult for us because we've got all these other things going on in our heads. The book also states that chimpanzees and humans have 98% of the same DNA. The 2% difference accounts for millions of neuron firings in the brain. Of course, there's good and bad consequences to that, right? We are capable of so much more, good or bad, because of our brains. So, this discussion is about the plastic brain, neuroplasticity. Has anyone here read this book, The Brain That Changes Itself? You have? Okay, great. So this is going to be a little bit of a review for you, but what a great book. And the concept of neuroplasticity, let's talk about that. Neuro meaning nervous system, plastic meaning what? What does plastic mean?
Changeable.
Changeable, exactly. All right. So the greater the neuroplasticity, the changeability of your nervous system, the better. Basic concepts that I got out of this book is that a use it or lose it principle. The more you use your brain in different ways, the better off you are. And the deterioration of your brain and your nervous system is less likely to occur. Aging decreases neuroplasticity. Okay? If you think about some of those quite elderly people, the ones that you just admire so much because, wow, they're 95 years old and they are doing this, and they play the piano, and they play their games, and they go to bingo, and they do all of these different things, and they look great. It's because they're doing all these different things to stimulate, or at least ward off degeneration of their brains. It's vital that we engage in these types of activities. Things like, we all understand how important it is to exercise, but to exercise involving using your brain in a productive way. So being on the elliptical, looking up and who knows what you're thinking about, right? Versus, the only thing I can think of is I've gravitated, not ashamed to say this, but when I go to the gym, I go do step aerobics. And I'm the only dude in there half the time. It's because something to read and react, right? It's physical, there's music going on, and I can't daydream in that class. And I just feel so focused throughout the day. So come see me Monday, Wednesday, Friday, not Tuesday, Thursday, no. The left brain, as a lot of people is the logical brain, and the right brain is the creative, emotional side. And the greater the communication between those hemispheres, the better. So here's some excerpts from this book. A woman that was perpetually falling. Now, this isn't going to be. I'm going to be doing some reading from these books just because they word it better than I could paraphrase it. Okay, so I won't read you the whole book, but Cheryl feels like she's perpetually falling, and because she's feeling like she's falling, she falls. When she stands up without support, she looks within moments as if she were standing on a precipice about to plummet. First, her head wobbles and tilts to one side. Her arms reach out to try to stabilize her stance. Soon her whole body is moving chaotically back and forth, and she looks like a person walking a tightrope in that frantic seesaw moment before losing his balance, except that both her feet are firmly planted on the ground, wide apart. She doesn't look like she's only afraid of falling, more like she's afraid of being pushed. And so Cheryl's problem is that her vestibular apparatus, the sensory organ for the balance system, isn't working. She's very tired, and her sense that she's in free fall is driving her crazy because she can't think about anything else. So these types of people are in great despair, obviously, and a lot of people do get so frustrated with this issue that they end up committing suicide. Thankfully, she got in contact with a gentleman that was doing groundbreaking research with this type of issue, Paul Baccarita, and he designed basically like a hard hat, a worker's hard hat helmet with a whole bunch of sensors in it that detect motion. And then what he did was, from that, created a mouthpiece that she would put in, or one of these patients would put in, and would stimulate the tongue, so that when she would bend her head forward, it would stimulate the front part of the tongue, and when she bent her head backward, the back part. And it was kind of bypassing part of her sensory system that wasn't working. So I'll kind of read you the response here. Cheryl puts on the hat and closes her eyes. She leans back from the table, keeping 2 fingers on it for contact. She doesn't fall, though she has no indication whatsoever what is up and down, except the swirling of champagne bubbles over her tongue. She lifts her fingers from the table. She's not wobbling anymore. She starts to cry. The flood of tears that come after trauma. She can open up now that she has the hat on and feels safe. For the first time she put on the hat, the sense of perpetual falling left her for the first time in 5 years. We'll fast forward. Now comes the second neuroplastic marvel. Cheryl removes the tongue device and takes off the hat. She gives a big grin, stands free with her eyes closed, and doesn't fall. Then she opens her eyes and, still not touching the table, lifts 1 foot off the ground. So she's balancing on the other. So she's standing on 1 foot already. She goes on to, she's overflowing with emotion, as you can only imagine. What a great story. And there's so many in this book. Stories of severe stroke victims that, usually these people are are written off, and they found out a way to help these people rehabilitate by desensitizing the good side. So let's say that your right side is the side that wasn't affected by a stroke, and what they would do is sling your right side and put a mitt over top of it to desensitize that area, and then just basically through over and over rehabilitation, getting that left side, trying to reactivate the left side, and they've had amazing results, anywhere from a little bit of change to almost 100% improvement. And it is hard work, hours a day of rehabilitation. A lot of people get very, very frustrated with it, but they get the usage back. Phantom limb pain. Does anyone know what that is? Yes.
Oh yeah,
Strong.
phantom limb pain, that refers to when you have an amputation and the patient still senses that they can feel that limb that's no longer there.
Right. And obviously, if there's a lot of pain associated with that, and there's no limb there, that's a bit of a problem. And a lot of times what they tried to do was even make the amputation smaller and smaller, thinking that would help, and that wouldn't help. And so any ideas, has anyone heard of how they came up with an idea how to combat this? Yes?
Well, I did see something on a documentary where they put a mirror and made like there was a limb there, but it really wasn't there. And somehow that offered relief to the person.
Thank you. It saved me a lot of explanation. That was perfect. It's exactly right. You put your, let's say the right arm, your left arm is amputated, but the right arm through something that closes off visually, but then there's a mirror down here, and you just lean over, and it tricks your brain into thinking that the left limb is there. And from that, when the brain does realize, hey, there it is again, there's a sort a reorganization of everything that was kind of left, almost like left hanging as to what happened. And they explain it as there's some closure almost that occurs. Okay, just amazing. And then there's a girl born with half of a brain. Okay, and really neat story where she was, as a child, was exhibiting symptoms of being developmentally delayed, and once they finally did do a CT scan, she literally had one side of her cranium was empty. There was nothing there. And she had her right hemisphere, so she had a lot of the savant-like abilities, very logical. She could tell you what, on the February 13th, 1976 was a Friday. She just, could grasp those types of things. But she, of course, had some issues with problem solving and those types of issues. But what was neat was that typically you need the cross communication between the left and the right side. And the right side started taking on characteristics, started to adapt left hemisphere qualities. Not completely like, someone with both hemispheres, but did an amazing job of adapting. And her mother said she was very happy that she didn't find out till later on that her daughter literally had half a brain. It would have been very, very stressful on her. But she just thought she was fine. She developed normally for her. And this one here, it's kind of interesting. There's a theory of basically neuroplasticity, and who we choose to hang out with is very, very telling on the way the world is today. Okay, you can encourage neuroplasticity with who you hang out with. Okay, this is exactly what you're doing right now. You're learning, you're bettering yourself, you're introducing yourself to perhaps new concepts. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where people that all think the same thing, cross their arms, might be a little bit older, and are, this doesn't make any sense, why can't they be like they were the old way, doing these things, those darn kids, that kind of thing, right? And so who you choose to hang out with, and as you age, as you notice, when we're younger, I guess you could say, we're open to a lot more than we are typically as we go on through life, right? And if we choose to expose ourselves to different ideas, different societies, different walks of life, right? That's going to encourage neuroplasticity versus, you know, I'm just going to hang out with Bob who thinks exactly like, and agrees with everything I say, right? Pretty neat. I remember I had an aha moment there. So one of the best methods to increase neuroplasticity is actually a chiropractic adjustment. Where is that coming from? Okay. Well, it's coming from me. So one of my mentors, Dr. Richard Barwell, wrote this book, Why You Get Sick and How Your Brain Can Fix It. And he got me going on all of this stuff. Why I'm not, I guess you would say, a typical chiropractor. It really resonated with me. And I read the book and I'm just yeah, I remember him saying that kind of stuff. And I don't know if any of you know who Bruce Lipton is. Have you ever heard of him? Bruce, yeah. He did the I guess the endorsement of the book. And I was just saying earlier that the first night I met Dr. Barwell, I met Bruce Lipton, and I sat at a dinner table with them and was blown away at their conversation that I did not understand. Go ahead.
Is Bruce Lipton the author of the Biology of Belief?
Biology of Belief.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And how we're not predestined on the basis of our genetics, right? So if you have a genetic predisposition to that, doesn't mean you're pre-programmed to automatically have breast cancer or anything. The environment has to create the stimulus to the cell in order for that part of the DNA to be expressed. So yeah, I was saying I thought I knew it all. I was about 28, 29, and I went to this conference and heard Dr. Barwell talk, and it was wonderful. And then they needed a ride. It was in Edmonton, and so I had my dad's truck, and we hopped in the truck and went down to the restaurant, and I just felt so small, but I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Anyways, back to this slide. What does this have to do with the chiropractic adjustment? Well, I'm going to do some reading again here because I don't think I can articulate it as well as Dr. Barwell puts it. And I don't know what everybody's familiarity with chiropractic is. All I know is it's typically either good or bad in terms of people's opinions. And what we thought we were doing in chiropractic for years was correcting vertebral misalignments to reduce pressure on spinal nerves, and that's what I was taught, and that's what we all thought. Current research has shown that the chiropractic adjustment is not doing that, is extremely effective neurological pattern interrupt. The adjustment creates a barrage of sensory information directly into the central nervous system. The sensory input creates a change in the nervous system. Anytime you get the nervous system's attention to a point where it's starting to react, it means you have an opportunity to change the negative pattern back to a more balanced pattern. This alone is the foundation for the effectiveness of chiropractic from the very start and supports why all the various techniques in chiropractic get results. So now we'll move on to duration of care. The brain views survival value as its primary goal. It will always move toward a better neurological balance direction. The innate or inborn intelligence in the body wants to maintain a proper balance, and given any chance, it will try to reset itself to a more appropriate pattern. The second goal deals with the benefits of ongoing care. Chiropractors are well known for telling their patients that they need ongoing care, right, Rick?
You did.
Chiropractors, this has always been a challenge because of the selling overtone when chiropractors recommend lifetime type care, especially when the pain complaint has been corrected. As we now look past symptom relief toward improved neurological function, long-term care plans not only make sense, but are neurologically justified. The adjustment program is about neurological retraining, which takes time and repetition. Okay? Same thing as when the stroke patient is rehabilitating, right? Constant stimulation to the brain. And so when we do what we do, we're stimulating via the spinal cord to create a change in the brain and thus coordinating something new as a result. Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete. And every time you do that, you're wiping off some of the negative patterns. I didn't know there was going to be this many people here, so I was going to give a handout of this to everybody, and there might be one for each table if you wanted to pass this down, because we're going to move on from this slide. But Dr. Barwell introduced me to this chart. It looks kind of overwhelming to begin with, but it's actually the foundation of how it can really explain a lot of why people are the way they are, and why some people get sick and some people don't, and it really simplifies it all. And so if we look at the top, the person with a balanced nervous system, okay, those people don't get sick very often, and whatever type of intervention they usually have, they get better right away. Okay, they just got a little glitch in something, boom, they respond, because they've got all these, they're very high adaptability quotient. The rest of the population is in, or 80% of the population is in here. I'd say 10%, 80%, 10%. And these people are typical, okay? And I'm in here. You can kind of gravitate or be on the higher end of things, but that's most of those people. And then the exhausted nervous system. Those people are those, you know, the people that get sick really easily, or extremely sensitive to the littlest thing. Okay, they can't help it. It's not their fault. You think that they're faking it, but the reality is that their neurological patterns they're burnt out, basically, and it takes a lot of intervention to create a little bit of positive change, but they work at it. Okay. Has anyone heard the term allostasis?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Oh, okay, good. I figured someone would have. The ability to respond appropriately to what the environment demands versus homeostasis, which is being in complete balance. Allostasis gives you that adaptability insinuation, right? So again, when you're walking along in the BC Rockies and everything's wonderful, and then the bear jumps out, okay? Being in perfect balance homeostasis isn't appropriate in that situation. You need to be in a fight or flight response now. That's the healthy response. And then if you can recover when danger is no longer imminent, wow, then that is a real healthy response. So over-arousal, fight or flight response. This person's in that fight or flight response too often, almost in 24 hours a day. They usually have poor sleep quality, and it's difficult to fall asleep. Cholesterol is dumped into the body in preparation for bleeding. So cholesterol is a stress response being released by a whole bunch of cells, but usually mostly by the liver. Of course, you have increased blood pressure, and their digestion isn't typically very good. They're not absorbing their nutrients very well because they're in a fight or flight state. Some of these people have reproductive issues, and the extreme response would be anxiety. Often these people have cold, sweaty hands. The under-aroused nervous system. Feed or read. So they're kind of basically blah all the time. They often have poor attention and they have a foggy brain. These people also typically might have ADD, and it's the body's protective mechanism. People who have ADD and even ADHD, it's a post-traumatic stress response, and the body is going into a protective state. And in the question and answer session, if you want more clarification on that, please ask me about that. Poor sleep quality as well, but in a different way. Their digestion issues are usually constipation. And the extreme response would be a depressive nervous system or depressed state. So, wouldn't it be cool if we could measure this kind of stuff? Neuroplasticity, over or under arousal, and the instability nervous system. Well, we can. Again, Dr. Barwell came up with and engineered something called a neuroinfinity, and it's a type of technology utilizing biofeedback and neurofeedback. And what it does is it throws stimuli at you while you measure the body's physiological responses that the brain controls. So the SRE measures how we typically respond to stressors on a daily basis, and it answers 3 questions. Is your body working appropriately? Is the response appropriate? And how well you recover? Okay? So if it stimulates you to do something and you get really excited, that's appropriate. But if when you're told to close your eyes and relax, you don't bring it back down, then that's an issue. So there's a whole bunch of colors and graphs and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to tell you quickly what it measures. So it measures brain waves, and there's 3 particular brain waves that we're really paying attention to. Beta brainwave, which is a fight or flight type of brainwave. You need lots of, beta when we're alert, awake, focused adult. Okay, beta goes up. When you close your eyes and relax, beta should go down. But alpha, which is a healing, loving, conscious, creative type of brainwave, should go up. So when people meditate and pray and close their eyes, alpha goes up. Okay, some people try to accentuate alpha by other means, like marijuana use or something like that. But it's basically a high. Okay? And then theta represents your subconscious brain. Okay? And some of you might know this, but a lot of people suggest, and I would agree, that your subconscious runs your life. Things that you're not completely aware of, but are always in the back of your brain, actually run your life. And so it measures that as well. And theta should go down when we encounter a stressor and up during recovery. And it's very creative as well. It measures heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is where when you take a breath in, your pulse should go up, and when you exhale, your pulse should go down. Ideally, it should be between 18 and 30 beats per minute difference between the two. Okay? And it measures that. Heart rate, pretty simple, between 56 and 66 beats per second, and we want to see a variation depending on the stimuli. Skin conductance. So, when there's a lie detector test, you've seen on TV, or I don't know if you've ever had one or not, but this is the quickest way to know whether someone is responding to a stress or not. And I was doing some biofeedback training with this was mean of me, but he was trying to get a lot of the skin conductance, had really sweaty hands, and he really got it under control, and he's like, okay, doc, I got this under control. I said, okay, we'll see how well you get it under control. And so he was about a 16-year-old kid, and I said, so I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine a really cute girl that sits across from you in biology class. He goes, oh, he called me a name, actually, but the thing just went through the roof. And then I'll be back in 10 minutes, see if you can bring it back down. Hand temperature. Hand temperature is very telling. When you shake someone's hand, you can tell a lot about them. If they're cold hands all the time, that means the blood is being kept in the core and not being sent to the extremities. And if it's kept in the core, you're in a fight or flight state because your body's preparing, the body's being prepared for battle or a fight or flight situation, being sent to the major muscle groups. A lot of these people have digestive and reproductive issues because they're not getting blood flow to the gastrointestinal system and the reproductive organs. Respiration, ventilation, hyperventilation. Obviously, you're going to increase your breathing when you're stressed. And most of us do that. Most of us hyperventilate all the time. But having the ability to slow our breathing down, and I'm sure a lot of you understand the importance of deep abdominal breathing, and this is part of that as well. That's how you actually get your heart rate variability under control, is doing deep diaphragmatic breathing. Very important. Last but not least, muscle balance. And when we do the testing, we put electrodes or sensors on your trapezius muscles, because those things are very much barometers to stress interpretation. And the reason why we do that is if we're stressed, our startle response is this. Okay? Why do we do this when we're startled? Anyone?
So somebody can't cut her head off as easy?
Right? What are you protecting?
Heart.
Hmm?
Are you protecting your heart?
Nope.
Your head.
Head. Your brain. Your body inherently knows to protect this. Okay? Now, we've seen people that walk around like this all the time. Right? A lot of those people are in a protective state. They're in a non-confrontational state. They don't want any confrontation. They're in a protective state, and there's often a reason for that. Okay. How are we doing for time?
We're 7:45. Yeah, we're fine.
We're fine?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We're getting there. Okay, so I had a 22-year-old female education student come in. She had digestive difficulties. She had an irritable bowel, chronic upper back and shoulder pain. She was very fit. She had migraine headaches. And she was under care from December and reevaluated, August to December, reevaluated in February. I don't expect you to understand all this, and if you do, awesome. Basically, what we want to see with brain waves is we want to see dynamic changes occurring. This is her first one. It's just a flat line, right? Her brain is not changing regardless of what is being asked of it, okay? And then after I don't know how, 3 months of care, and then hadn't seen her for 2 months, she came back, got retested, but we knew she was better. Amazing changes. This is not typical, by the way, so this is amazing. Skin conductance went from fairly sweaty at 4 to what they're measuring down to anywhere between 1.5 and 3. Respiration slowed down considerably by about half. Her hand temperature went up by 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, now we've moved on. Anyways, that was a really neat success story. So now I'm going to bring it back to what are the number one cause of health problems in our society? Lifestyle. And it's the choices that we make are relevant to how healthy we are, not our genetics. Our genetics, they play a role, and don't get me wrong, but how you choose to live your life and deal with those stressors. There are more 100-year-olds than ever before. Okay, people are living longer, and I forget the statistics. Compared to 1985, there's a exponential growth in the number of 100-year-olds, and as we know, the population is aging considerably. And it's not about living 100 years old, I think we would all agree that we would like our quality of life, if we happen to live to be 100, we want our quality of life to be pretty good. So what are the types of things that we could do to do that? Well, the attitude, positive attitude. I think we can all agree, and a lot of us in here have subscribed to that. I'm sure you've had a few discussions about that already. Rest and quality sleep. That's when we heal, is when we sleep. When we go into that deep delta brainwave sleep. And if we can't get there, we can't heal as well as we're meant to. Rigorous exercise, so pushing your body to its limits. There's a time and place for everything, right? You need the slow-moving exercise, which I really recommend for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't push their body enough that they, as far as they could, and that's how we can maintain our muscle tone and maintain our strength. Left brain exercises like crosswords and playing cards. Right brain, playing music, playing piano, painting, and drawing, meditating, praying. Okay? Brain loves that. Positive mental imagery when your eyes are closed. We measure that on the stress response evaluation. I can always tell people that do that. And their alpha goes through the roof when their eyes are closed. Proper nutrition. Eating food found in nature. I mean, that's a whole another discussion. Having appropriate stress responses. Well, that seems easy. It's not. Because we've developed that pattern along the way. Of course, the chiropractic component is, increasing neuroplasticity with chiropractic care. So what does all of this mean? Okay. Here we go, right? I kind of jumped all over the place with all of this stuff. And how is this relevant in all of this stuff? So I think probably a lot of you have read or seen The Secret, okay? The law of attraction. What you think about is what you get, whether it's good or bad. If you focus on something, I'm gonna, a neighbor of mine, he was obsessed with not having a heart attack. And so he walked every day, extremely fit. His dad died at 50-some years of age of a heart attack, and he just had, last fall, a huge heart attack and a quintuple bypass. And I just know, that's my feeling on that he was focused so much on not having a heart attack. Extremely fit. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, but he was quite obsessive. His cars are very clean. Anyways, focus, prayer, and thought in What the Bleep. Have you seen What the Bleep, that movie, right? Yeah. And there's many examples of that. The one that comes to mind is what was the New York State Lottery on 9/11/2012 numbers. Anyone hear this one? No? What was the three numbers of the New York State Lottery, three winning numbers? 911. I'm not kidding. I looked it up on the internet. On 2012, a year after 9/11, the New York State Lottery was 911. Okay? Whoa.
A lot of people thinking about it.
Yeah. Collective thought. Focus, prayer, and thought, the Center of Positive Living and the Chiropractic Wellness Society brought Dr. Deepak Chopra in to speak one night, and I remember him telling this story they were studying twins and put all these physiological measurements, physiological monitoring tools on them, two twins, and put them on polar or opposite ends of the United States, one in New York and LA, or on East Coast, West Coast, and they provided a stimulus to one of them, and the other one had a physiological reaction to that stimulus simultaneously. Not to the level that the person that got it, but there was a response at that time. And they were in what's called a Faraday chamber, which doesn't allow any electromagnetic frequencies in or out. What's that all about? That's just That's whack. How about this one? The person with multiple, there's a study or an example of a person with multiple personality disorder, and one of them was a type 1 diabetic. And so when they went into that state, the pancreas shut down, couldn't stimulate insulin, and they went in, they were diabetic. And once they came out of it, whoop, fired back up again. How's that for brain function, right? Or whatever, misfunction, but it just illustrates that the power of the brain. What does all of this stuff have to do? It's all energy. That's the only way I can tie it in together. Is that we're all energy, and how we, energy is directed all different ways. Now, how are you going to direct your energy? Right? You're here tonight because you're looking for greater ways of self-improvement, and I mean, everybody here has is leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, if that matters to you. But there's good energy, bad energy. It's not for some of us to decide, but you have a choice in how you direct yours. So I'm so grateful for being here to be able to help people be able to do what I enjoy every day. Hope you see the passion that I have for this stuff, and to be able to help and influence people to ask important questions. And really, the ultimate thing is to make a change, whether it is a small one or a big one. I mean, as a chiropractor, all I'm trying to do is help people come in because they want something to change. So ideally, that's what we're trying to do. So that's it. That's my family. And that's all I have to say. So if you have any questions, let them go. Hi.
Hi. Earlier on in your talk, you talked about a focused exercise. Would yoga be a focused exercise, would you think?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I recommend, that's probably the number one thing I recommend for people, particularly the over-aroused nervous system people. Okay, so those people need to create some degree of balance in their life. So they're the go, talk really fast, eyes are really big, that kind of stuff, and moving and shaking, that kind of thing. And they need a time to chill. And they do not like it, because I could be so busy doing something else, all this kind of stuff, but they need to, whatever degree of it, right? And on the opposite end, the very, people that are stereotypical yoga type people, right? They could go play some basketball every now and then, go turn it up a little bit, because it's always good to explore the other end of the spectrum. For sure. Yeah, yoga's fantastic. Hello.
I don't get the connection between adjusting one's bones has any connection to all this.
Okay, no problem. And I had to gloss over this because it was going to take too long. So, the only way that we can access the nervous system, we can't touch it, right? It's literally encased in bone, right? Right? So, the only way we can do it is kind of like knocking on a door, so to speak, okay? You're going to knock on a door, you're communicating with someone. The only way we can communicate with the brain, we can't touch it, we have to be able to do something to communicate with it. Now, the spine has mechanoreceptors in each of the joints. And so when we go make an adjustment or we put a force in there, we're stimulating the receptors, okay? When we make a stimulation of the receptors, it sends a message up the spinal cord to the brain. The brain has to then process that information and deal with it, do something hopefully, thus creating a response as a result. Usually what happens is if we're stimulating, and that's where the skill comes in, is you find the right spot that needs to be stimulated, it then sends the message down to say, oh, I don't need to do what I was creating in that area anymore. I don't need to have the muscles tense up, and the ligaments protect that, and I can create something new because there's actually new movement occurring in that area. And the effects of that go on from there.
How does that differ from, say, massages or good exercise itself?
It's similar and different in their own unique way. Exercise is extremely important, and a lot of people who are physically fit don't require the as many, how shall I say, outside interventions, but it's not always a replacement for it, right? Because it's a way that we can combat the negative stressors in the environment. Massage is excellent. The two work hand in hand together, because if you get an adjustment and then a massage, the adjustment opens up the nervous system for change, and then the massage comes in and helps to reinforce that change. So the two work very well together. Same thing with physical therapy and a lot of these things. Yes?
So the example that you gave with the education student.
Yes.
So what kind of program or things did you do with her over that 4 or 5 months? You say you worked with her.
Yeah.
What, in a nutshell, what did all that entail?
The primary thing was just providing her the chiropractic care that I do, okay? And in her case, she needed really light force care because her nervous system was so overstimulated, so I didn't want to stimulate it anymore. So I was doing a lot of light force types of things. As well as what we did is we did some deep abdominal breathing training, biofeedback, excuse me. And so she was, as you could, I don't know if you remember seeing how she slowed her breathing down so dramatically. So that created a lot of sense of calm, and the instrumentation that we use gives you instant feedback whether how you're doing that or whether it's working for you or not. Yeah. So she was really healthy. She just needed a change to occur. She had a lot of good things going for her, and her body just really, really grabbed onto that change.
So I'm understimulated then, is that why we wrestle all the time?
Is that part of your physiotherapy?
Yeah, no, really,
chiropractic?
no, it's pretty physical.
Well, you vacillate. So yours kind of goes more in the instability type of situation. So in some cases, you need a low stimulus adjustment. Sometimes you need a little more than that. So we do a little more.
Unstable. That's what my doctor says.
Okay. Yes.
A typical, if somebody was to come into your office with some sort of a question about their body alignment or what have you, what is your initial consultation? Is it to just mostly question them to find out, and then you don't really do anything at that point? It's more of an initial consultation.
What I've typically do, the person comes in and we sit down and I take a history as to why they're there, what they want to change, and then I'll do a physical exam, and we'll do a few other things of how your nervous system is working. We'll put you on bilateral weight scales to see how you're interacting with the environment. You get a lot of correlation between if someone's constantly putting more weight on one side compared to the other. That correlation and the circle chart there that you got is quite interesting. So people that have high fluctuating, you're heavier on the left by 20 pounds, then heavier on the right by 2 pounds, then that you're all over the place, that's an unstable nervous system. But a lot of people kind of have a similar type of predictable reading, and that's the kind of pattern we want to change. So that's one of the things I do, plus a spinal exam, how things are moving, where things aren't moving so well, and we might begin care there. Then I recommend the stress response evaluation that's included and because it just gives me so much more information. And then people can decide based on that if they want to deal with what we found on there or not. That's up to them. Hello.
Yeah, I've got a few here. I'm just gonna unload on
Okay,
you.
here we go. Boom.
And I'm gonna stand up so I can project my intentions a little more effectively. Just makes me more comfortable. Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. All right. Just to kind of continue on from a previous question there, would you consider some of that work you were just talking about for someone who, say, doesn't have a problem but is an athlete and wants like a functional movement assessment or something to that degree? Would that make sense for them to go to you for that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent. That's good. And in that same vein, some of these are just quick I've got here. You referred to the posture, this one here with the protective thing as well. And I've seen a lot of that in bodybuilders overtraining their anterior chain.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's all, if you're in your opinion, if it's all one or the other, or is some of it like maybe an insecurity thing that it just happens to correlate with postural kyphosis? Could be. It's just another thought.
Yeah, it could be.
As well, your circle chart here, I'm wondering, it's just for yourself, have you ever considered this chart, but including a third dimension where depth represents time, and the line that's produced basically tracks your neural stability and whatever throughout your life. So depth is time. And you could be over here when you're 20 and over here when you're...
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, you can vacillate, you can change.
Yeah.
Typically, you're gonna gravitate to one part of it, but
Yeah.
you know, change is good. Being locked in is not.
You comment as well on Deepak's study with twins. I recently read some stuff on that. Just wanted to comment that can be anybody who, any people who meditate for, I think they did about 20 minutes with Faraday cages, and on feelings of connectivity. Doesn't have to be twins. So.
Well, I can just point out that I am a twin, and I have zero connection with my twin brother, and I'm identical. So I kind of find that fishy.
Oh, that's fine.
I've lots of Deepak Chopra tapes and things, and over the last 20 years, I've listened to many of them numerous times. And he also talks about that matter with one molecule of something being in England or something like that, and another one then having a lab in the States.
Quantum entanglement.
And they did an impulse on the matter in the States, and the molecule in London reacted. So it doesn't have to be twins. That was just one of the examples he used.
Exactly.
And what he talked about, I'm still a member of the Center for Positive Living, now known as the Center for Earth Living.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember him talking about was that if somebody sneezes in India, you feel it. That's how he wanted us to know how connected we were.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
What science does he study?
He's a medical doctor.
That's not a scientist.
Yeah, it is.
No,
Well,
no, they study science, as in they practice. And doctor is also a degree.
Excuse me, I think it's a question and answer period at this point for the gentleman in the front. If we could just do that, maybe at the end we could do that. Great.
Yeah, fair enough. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk to. But one last thing that sort of, I think it goes hand in hand with your whole thing here. Can you speak to, or have you heard of a fairly recent, at least to me, a phenomenon called biohacking, where you're doing a lot of this stuff to optimize, but not in like things with your brain and so for example, some of my personal experiences which kind of seem to go close to what you're doing. Cold thermogenesis, where I adapt myself up to what would be like a lethal exposure of cold, so 35 minutes in 4 or 5 degrees Celsius water, and also achieving my genetic strength potential in as little as 15 minutes a week. That obviously has to do with neural efficiency and not necessarily muscle mass. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure. That was a lot to process.
I just wanted to mention that the book on that last strength training thing is Body by Science by Doug McGuff, and
Okay.
he is pretty much on the same wavelength as you as it refers to functional strength training with very minimal input to tremendous results.
Oh, okay, cool. No, that's kind of the way, like I said earlier, why or why not? I haven't heard of that. But my first instinct is not to say no, right? There's new innovations occurring all the time. And my first instinct is, I haven't heard of that, but
You practice here in the city?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming to see you.
Okay. But yeah, my first instinct is, maybe it's because of, there's a lot of skepticism maybe around something. We're getting chiropractic getting to be more mainstream, right? So who am I to judge something that might not be as much, right? Without investigating it further, just because it might threaten my belief system or something like that. I'm really trying to be open-minded that way. So.
That's great. Thanks.
Yes.
Can I acquire a business card?
Yep. Yeah, I got some
Okay,
cards
cool.
here.
That's it.
Okay. Cool. Anything else?
Can you speak a little bit as to what diet and sleep might do for your own group health?
Diet?
Diet and
Oh,
I'm not hearing the question.
So she was asking as to the role of diet in all of this, which could be a very, very long discussion, but in simplistic terms, it's so vitally important. Okay, we're in a very toxic society, in my opinion, now, and there isn't as many nutrients available as there used to be when the soil was full of more nutrients than it is now, and therefore, ideally, it would be great to get all of our nutrition directly from our pure foods found in nature, but that isn't always the case. So sometimes you need to supplement and to bring some of those nutritional needs up. But there's just so many examples of how toxicity in our lives is causing a lot of problems. So, did I answer that?
I realize it's a big topic, so.
Yeah, it is. And what we think is healthy is changing all the time, and it depends on who you talk to, and even I'm just getting dizzy with what and it's also individually based, so. Yeah.
Can you just put that graph back up so I can write down what's written on the bottom, that colorful one, the one you handed out?
Oh, sure.
And then I can probably Google it, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Go ahead.
I had something to do with this subconscious. I had a question, I didn't know how to frame it really. You'd mentioned very briefly at one point that the subconscious is what runs our life.
Yeah.
So the plasticity that you're talking about is messing around with the subconscious, is it? For the most part?
Messing around with everything, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're measuring, the subconscious is your theta waves primarily, and that's usually the most. I rarely see people with nicely flowing theta waves reacting appropriately. And then when you start asking some questions, it's illustrated that that is an issue. For example, I always talk about how subconscious can run your life. People who smoke cigarettes, that don't want to smoke cigarettes, know that it is bad for you. They know that, okay? They're conscious of that. They're aware that it can cause lung cancer, okay? And they don't want to do it typically, but there's something that's driving them that's bigger than that conscious realization to go have another cigarette. And I just use that as an example, but the addictive personality, it's usually their subconscious or their theta that isn't as regulated as it could be. And, you know, how did it get that way? Well, it's life accumulated till now, basically. So there's lots of things that happen, usually emotional stuff that accumulates over time. But any kind of trauma, physical as well, can cause that as well.
So things like neuro-linguistic programming, they're also a way of manipulating the plasticity
Yes.
of the deep theta regions of the.
Yeah. I also utilize something called MindFit program. It used to be called Zen frames. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're basically light frequency glasses. So they're hooked up to an iPod and earphones. And what it does is it stimulates neuronal changes via the optic nerve. So it does all these different patterns of flashing lights, okay? And then at the same time, it's not hypnosis, but it's putting your brain into the most kind of alpha theta, just kind of takes it in and out of theta, right? And you're not in control of this. And they actually measure this with EEG readings, so it's not a theory, it's been proven. And so it's like basically taking a volume dial, theta, alpha, and just zipping it back and forth. And you're put into a really relaxed state, and then you can listen to any kind of program that you want. It's kind of auto-suggestion, but it's things like how to reduce stress, or there's all these different themes, but it works really well, particularly people that use it on a daily basis before they go to sleep. It can help them fall asleep, and it's really helped a lot of people. So I have some people that come, they'll get adjusted, and then we'll put the goggles on them for a half an hour after, and they're pretty zen after that. So.
Just one last question here. Do you try to make people aware that rather than it being the program that's doing it to them, it's their body responding? Obviously, it's their body responding, so therefore there's not the tendency to use something as a crutch indefinitely.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
No, nobody can cure anybody else. Okay, you can only cure yourself. You just might need some help, some outside stimulus. Really, is all it is. But you know, nobody can cure anyone else. You have the ability to be as good as you have the ability to be, right? So it's just about unleashing that. So yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Hello. How does cranial sacral massage figure into any of this, and what's your experience with that?
I actually, it's fantastic, and it's very congruent, it's very similar, and we're pretty much doing the same things. So people that get that done, I endorse it. And then there's a gal in town, I don't know if anyone heard of Gail Cook, but she does advanced craniosacral stuff that's kind of not typical of what the entry-level people do, and she's amazing. I don't know if any of you know her, but I compare her to the big dude from the Green Mile that unfortunately passed away, but she's someone that I swear takes on everybody. She just takes it out of whatever's bugging them, and she takes it in herself, and which isn't good for her, but you'd have to see her to realize what I'm trying to communicate, because everyone I tell that to kind of nods their heads, but she's amazing. So
What was her name?
Gail Cook. She works out of her house or something like that, and it's not what you would think it would be, but it's just flat out works. So yes, hello.
Hi, the alpha theta, the lights. Is that something that somebody can purchase for somebody else, like for a Christmas gift
Yep.
to help them if they're sort of holding on to
Yep.
issues?
Yep. Absolutely. People that do that. So you can come get my card. I have some of those. You can
How much?
they're $4.95. $495. You can, I have people that do it for an extra $10 a session after their visit, or you can rent them for a week for $50 a week. I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. And it's also, if you Google MindFit, you can order it right off that website, but I have them already and for a little bit cheaper, but yeah, you can Google that. They're very effective. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone that has migraine headaches. So that seems to be something that they don't like. But some of those people have just listened to the program without the lights, and they've benefited from it. So. Yeah.
Okay. If that's it for